They say life has a cruel way of testing those who think they have it all figured out. Victor Hargrove was one such man, a millionaire with power, pride, and polished floors so shiny they reflected his ego. But the night he slammed the door on a shivering stranger, he had no idea that fate would drag him to his knees just hours later, and that same stranger would hold the key to his daughter's life. This is a story of arrogance, grace, and the kind of redemption you never forget. You're watching Storytelling and Beyond, where every tale is more than just a story. It's a reflection of us all. Don't forget to subscribe for more heart-touching narratives. The sky had turned a deep, bruised gray by the time Victor's Mercedes turned into the gated drive of his Beverly Hills mansion. His day had been packed: meetings, investor calls, and a photo shoot for a magazine cover celebrating self-made men under 50. His assistant had already picked up his custom dinner from the restaurant. Everything in his life was on schedule. Predictable. Controlled. He stepped out of his car, adjusting the cuffs of his Italian trench coat, when a voice, barely above the wind, called out to him from the edge of his iron gate. "Sir, please. I just need a warm place tonight. Just a night. That's all." Victor turned sharply, startled. There stood a man, late 40s, maybe 50, his shoulders hunched, a torn duffel bag slung across his back. His boots were soaked, his fingers red and cracked from the cold. His beard was overgrown, face hidden behind layers of exhaustion and humility. Victor's eyes narrowed. "You're on private property. I'll have to ask you to leave. Now." The man raised a hand, not threateningly, but almost in surrender. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I lost my luggage, my phone. I'd been walking all day. Just a garage, a bench." Victor cut him off with a wave of his hand. "This neighborhood isn't for squatters. Go to a shelter. That's what they're there for. I worked too hard to have strangers loitering around my home." The homeless man stood there silently for a moment. And then he did something unexpected. He smiled. Not out of sarcasm or mockery, but something far deeper. Compassion? Pity? "I understand," he said softly. "May God bless you anyway. And protect what you love." Victor didn't answer. He simply turned, buzzed himself through the security gate, and walked up the stone steps to his front door, muttering, "What the hell's wrong with people? Always someone else's fault." Inside, the warmth of his home, heated floors, scented candles, a jazz playlist humming in the background, swallowed him. His wife, Lydia, was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine. Their daughter Emma, bright and gentle, sat curled up on the couch with a book. "Long day?" Lydia asked. Victor nodded, throwing his coat over a chair. "Yeah. And just when I thought I'd made it home in peace, some street guy tried to beg his way onto our property." Lydia frowned. "What did he want?" "A place to sleep." "Can you believe the audacity? I told him off." Emma looked up, her young face slightly pale. "Daddy, maybe he didn't have anywhere else to go." Victor chuckled dryly. "Then he should have made better choices. Everyone's got problems, honey. Some of us choose to solve them." He kissed her forehead, trying to dismiss the knot in his stomach that had suddenly formed. Outside, the wind picked up. And on a bench 2 blocks away, under a half-lit street lamp, the same man curled into his jacket and closed his eyes, unaware that within hours, he would be called upon to save the very family who turned him away. The sound of shattering glass jolted Victor out of a shallow sleep. It was well past midnight, and Lydia's scream from downstairs sent a bolt of fear through his chest. He rushed from bed and sprinted down the hallway, his heart thudding. In the living room, he found Emma collapsed on the floor, a broken water glass beside her, her body trembling uncontrollably. "Emma!" Victor shouted, cradling her in his arms. Lydia had already grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. Emma's lips were pale, and her breath was coming in short, panicked gasps. She said she felt dizzy, Lydia choked out. Then she just fell. Victor's mind went blank as paramedics arrived minutes later, navigating the marble floors and tall pillars of his luxurious home. They stabilized Emma, loaded her gently into the ambulance, and one medic turned to Victor. "She's spiking a fever, dangerously high. How long has she been like this?" I don't know," Victor stammered. "She seemed fine earlier." "She had dinner. We were watching a movie." The medic gave him a tight nod. "We'll do what we can. Follow us." Victor's hands trembled as he drove behind the ambulance, Lydia sobbing quietly beside him. Nothing felt real. His empire, his money, all of it seemed useless in the face of his daughter's limp body. At the hospital, time twisted cruelly. Doctors ran tests. Nurses hurried past. Machines beeped. Hours passed. Victor stood outside Emma's hospital room, staring through the glass at the fragile figure of his daughter, small, pale, her eyes closed, tubes and wires snaking around her. Then came the words that broke him. "We've identified the condition," the doctor said. "It's an acute autoimmune reaction. A rare one. Her immune system is attacking her organs. She's in critical condition. We've put out an emergency call for a rare plasma donor, someone with a very specific antigen profile. If we can't find a match within the next few hours." He didn't finish. Victor sank into a chair, staring at the floor. Lydia's hand squeezed his, both of them clinging to hope into each other. And then, as if fate was playing out a silent drama, a nurse ran up to the attending physician. "We have a donor," she said breathlessly. "A match just walked in off the street. Says he saw the alert at the bus station and came straight here." Victor's head snapped up. "What's his name?" The nurse paused. Edward Dawson." Victor froze. He knew that name. Or rather, the voice. The gentle humility. It couldn't be. Racing through the corridor, he followed the nurse to the donation unit. And there he was. Sitting calmly, speaking softly to a technician as they prepared to take his blood. The same man Victor had turned away just hours ago. His tattered coat was slung over the back of the chair. His beard was still overgrown, his hands still cracked. But his presence, it radiated something Victor couldn't quite describe. "Why?" Victor's voice cracked as he approached him. "Why would you help us, after what I did?" Edward looked up, his gaze calm. "Because no one deserves to lose their child. Not even those who forget their humanity for a moment. Besides, she's innocent." Victor stood silent. The words lodged in his throat. He had built a fortress around his life, money, reputation, power. But tonight, all of it paled in front of a homeless man's kindness. A stranger he had refused a bench, was now saving his daughter's life. The night dragged on in a blur of sterile lights, quiet prayers, and rhythmic beeping monitors. Victor sat outside the intensive care unit, staring at the floor, his hands still trembling from what he had just witnessed. Edward Dawson, the homeless man he had dismissed, ignored, and brushed off like a nuisance, was now hooked up to a machine, donating the plasma that doctors believed could save Emma's life. Lydia sat beside Victor, her head resting on his shoulder. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been shattered by guilt. Hours passed before the doctor returned. His eyes, tired but soft, offered a small, precious sliver of hope. "She's responding," he said, allowing himself the gentlest smile. "We're not out of danger yet, but this gives us a real fighting chance." Victor's breath hitched. His eyes welled. He hadn't realized how much he'd been bracing for the worst. The doctor continued, "We'll be watching her closely over the next 24 hours. But she's strong. Just like her father." Victor shook his head slowly. "No, not like me. Like the man who saved her." He rose and quietly asked the nurse where Edward had been taken. Minutes later, Victor stood outside the recovery room, staring through a glass window. Edward was awake, sipping warm soup from a disposable cup, wrapped in a hospital blanket. His clothes, clean now, lay folded on a nearby chair. His beard had been trimmed by a kind nurse. He looked older than Victor remembered, more tired, more human, but also somehow stronger. Victor stepped inside slowly. Edward looked up and smiled faintly, as if nothing had happened. As if saving a life had been part of his daily routine. "I owe you everything," Victor said, his voice low and broken. "My daughter, she's alive because of you." Edward's eyes softened. "She's a good girl. She waved to me once from the back seat. Made my day. Guess this was my way of returning the kindness." Victor was speechless. The contrast between his wealth and Edward's poverty had never felt more shameful. He, with all his connections and fortune, had almost lost everything, and a man with nothing had given everything to save what mattered most. "You deserve better than the streets," Victor finally said. "Please. Let me help. A home. A job. Anything. You gave me back my family." Edward looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not here to collect debts, Mr. Trent," he replied gently. "But if you truly mean that, then don't help me because of guilt. Help someone else who's invisible, like I was. See them. Hear them. That's what people like me need most." Victor nodded slowly, something shifting deep inside him. That night, as Emma rested and Lydia quietly wept with relief, Victor sat beside Edward's bed and listened to his story, to his life, to the journey that had brought him to that hospital corridor. And for the first time in years, Victor didn't feel like a man at the top of the world. He felt like a man finally waking up to it. The following morning brought with it a soft, golden light that poured through the hospital windows, warming the sterile white walls with a sense of fragile peace. Emma stirred awake for the first time in days. Her fingers gently twitched, and then her eyes fluttered open to the sight of her mother's tear-soaked smile. Victor rushed to her bedside, dropping to his knees, holding her hand like it was made of porcelain. "Daddy!" Emma's voice was hoarse but unmistakably hers. "Yes, baby. I'm here," he choked out, kissing her fingers again and again. "You're okay. You're safe now." They wept together. Father, mother, and daughter held together by a fragile thread of fate that only a stranger's selfless act had kept from snapping. Later that afternoon, Edward was discharged from the hospital. His vitals were stable, but the doctors urged him to rest. Victor had already arranged a hotel room for him, clean clothes, and a warm meal waiting. But Edward declined the offer. "I appreciate it," he said, standing by the hospital doors, dressed in a fresh shirt and jacket Victor had brought. "But I'm not ready for charity. If I'm going to move forward, I want to stand on my own feet. Just give me a chance." Victor placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's exactly what I'm offering. A second chance, not as a favor, but as something you've earned 1,000 times over." Edward nodded. "Then I'll take it. Not for me, but maybe so one day, I can do for someone else what you've now helped me do." Weeks later, Victor opened a foundation in Edward's name, the Dawson Initiative, offering job training and shelter placements for the homeless in the city. Edward insisted on being part of the work, and soon, his days were filled with purpose, guiding others who had once stood in the same forgotten shadow. And Emma? She made a full recovery. Her first request when she left the hospital was simple: "Can I visit Mr. Dawson?" And she did, often bringing cookies she baked, drawings she made, and sometimes just sitting quietly beside him in the community garden where he now spent his mornings. What began as a harsh, dismissive glance in a parking lot became the beginning of a profound transformation. A millionaire had thought he had everything, until a man with nothing showed him the true value of life. This is more than just a story about second chances, it's a reminder that compassion doesn't depend on wealth, and sometimes, those we overlook are the ones who hold the power to heal what money never could. You've been watching Storytelling and Beyond, where every tale touches the heart and leaves a message to remember. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real and inspiring narratives.